Hey everybody, and welcome to the first installment in my dialing in series for the HX Stomp, which is the newly released product by Line 6, kind of a mini helix of sorts, I guess we could call it. I just wanted to do a couple things. I was really fortunate, as you may already know, to have been able to provide Line 6 with some of the factory presets that ship with HX Stomp, which was a real honor and a real enjoyable thing to take part in. I was so happy to be asked to do that. What I want to do today is I'm going to take you through one of those presets and show you how I went about dialing it in. But first, I want to go over to HX Edit, the new HX Edit, which now works with HX Stomp, and take you through a few of the differences compared to what we might be used to with our normal helix, and some of the possible limitations we have with HX Stomp, being that it doesn't have the same ability to have numerous paths and whatnot that the helix has. So let's dive over to HX Stomp and we'll take a look at this. Okay, so first thing we notice with the new HX Edit is up here it identifies that we are in fact using HX Stomp, right? Because of that, we notice that we only have one path, okay? As I've mentioned in a couple other videos that I've put out already, that we can have a single path with up to 6 blocks. That's not including the input and output block, okay? So 6 separate blocks. So we can see along this path, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, right? It has all the same effects, all the same amp models, cab models as the Helix. That's not changed at all, but we can only access 6 of these at a time. We do have the ability, though, to, let me just throw a quick gain block on here. I can still drag down and create path 1B. So we have path 1A, path 1B. We can still grab our mixer block and drag it down to give us access to our send outputs, okay? And we cannot drag the split block down as we could in the Helix, okay? So that doesn't work. So we still have some nice options here. Let me just clear that block. So the main outputs, we're just going to have main left and right outs unless we put a block on and drag it down, and then we can send out to the sends, okay? Our input blocks, we have main left, right, return left, right, USB 5.6, okay? So those are our input possibilities depending on if we want to reamp or how we're sending our signal into it, okay? So we might ask ourselves, well, what can we do with the limitations? Now, anybody who's watched my videos before know I use a template, usually with a compressor, LA Studio Comp at the end. Then an EQ. Usually, sometimes the EQ is just for high and low cuts. Sometimes it's a little more complicated. Then we'd have a cab block, maybe some delay and reverb. I usually use my, my split crossover blocks, right? Which in this case here, I'm usually steering clear of it simply because of the fact I don't want to use up 2 of my blocks. Although in I think one of the factory presets I did do that. It's still possible depending on what else is going on in your snapshot. But I guess one of the simple templates I might come up with, I would not want to give up my LA Studio Comp at the end. So I would add that in. We'll go into my normal settings here. One thing I would do with my amp though, I would probably, actually before we get to the amp, let's throw a reverb on here. Let's go to a legacy room. Verb, bring that back to normal settings for me. Let's go to this block. I like a bit of delay, so as anybody who watches my videos knows, I'll probably go to a stereo transistor tape here, change it to quarter note, bring that feedback way back and mix back a bit. I'm just doing this instinctively, right? So at this point, I could say, okay, well, I might want my amp and cab. Now, what I would probably do with HX Stomp is go and add an amp and cab block together. So let's say we were going to use the Placater Dirty. All right, there's the cab block. I could do that just to save just save a block space, right? But let's say I wanted the dual cab, right? Because what happens now with this, because I may not want to use my split crossover, which would basically take up the last 2 spots here. That's the other thing with this, actually, is a little side point. If I was to do the split crossover, where I set up 2 gain blocks, this will likely be a question a lot of folks will have. If I drag one of these down and set this up in that split sorry about that. Split crossover configuration, where this becomes a crossover, and it doesn't matter what the settings are right now. You'll notice that I can't have 6 blocks on each of path 1A and path 1B. It's 6 blocks in total. So I can't come up here in this little space now and pop another block in. That's just not going to work. It's 6 total blocks, okay? So doing something like the split crossover in this little configuration is fine. It's a very simple, right? Compressor at the end, reverb, delay, split crossover, amp and cab blocks together. Okay, so that's one option. In this case, instead of having an EQ in the path now, I would probably want to come in and use my low cuts and high cuts on my cab blocks. Now, we've talked about this in the past, and this has been a discussion online a lot. The cab block high and low cuts versus the EQ block high and low cuts are less dramatic. They don't cut off with the same dramatic slope, right? So you might want to go a little more. So if I was usually going to set at 100 hertz and say 12 kilohertz, maybe I'm going to go to, I don't know, 9.5 and 110 or 120. You can play around with that and use your ears to decide what you want to do with that. So that's one possibility. I could still use a split crossover, but there's my whole chain now, right? Nothing wrong with that. We still have 3 snapshots we can use, right? Which is really kind of nice. Not as many, obviously, as on the Helix, but still flexible. Okay, so let's clear the split crossover blocks. Now, another way around that would be to say, well, just use an amp block, and then maybe I want to do dual cabs. But instead, again, of using 2 cab blocks, I can just go in and choose my dual cab block. I don't know what, I'll just go with I'll choose the 412 greenback and say 2 of those, one with a dynamic and one with a ribbon, pull the ribbon back a little bit. Maybe we want a little bit less of the dynamics, so we use our volume to control that, right? And then frees up one more block, right? Again, I'm not dialing anything sound-wise here yet. I'll do that when I pull up one of my presets. I'll show you what I did. But just some more ideas. So for me, and this is just my workflow, I don't want to sacrifice my compressor at the end. I want that to be there. I'm always going to want a bit of reverb and delay. I'm going to want my amp, obviously, right? Maybe some folks are going to want to throw a wah pedal or volume pedal in at the beginning because they have maybe a Mission Engineering expression pedal hooked up, of which we can also have 2 of these hooked up, right? So we could have a volume and a wah block. So I could add a wah in there if I so desire, right? And there would be another chain. But this is going to be totally dependent on what anybody likes to do. For me personally, I don't want to sacrifice that compressor. I want to have verb delay. I'm going to have either an amp and cab block together or a dual cab or amp cab, maybe split crossover. It just depends on what your needs are. So that's basically what we're dealing with. Very similar to dealing with the Helix, right? Not really too much of a difference, just the limitation of having 6 blocks and whatever processing power we have within HX Edit. Okay, so let's take this then. Let's go over to, if you'll notice the factory presets, they're grouped together into FX, where the Stomp is going to be used just as an effects processor. Direct is going to be full amp modeling and whatnot, right? So that we can just go direct into the console. 4CM, 4 cable method, and then we have some bass ones and some acoustic presets. And some keys, I guess. I haven't even looked at those ones. So if we go to any of the ones here with JS after it, those are the ones that I provided. So I don't know how many I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoops, what's going on here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 or so. Some of them were sort of kind of trying to imitate some classic tones. I have a video that I've either put up, I don't know when I'm going to be releasing it, or it's up already, or it's going to be coming up, is me using, like, for instance, I have one called Always Satch, so I did a little snippet of Always With Me, Always With You with that. Cliffs of Dover, I did a little Jeff Beck tune because we had his Lovers, I did a Petrucci solo from Under a Glass Moon, Van Halen's Jump, and Kid Charlemagne by Steely Dan. I just did a whole montage of solos in this video just using these presets. Not that they're exact copies, again, like I always say. I hate to have to always say it, but it was just kind of in the vein of those. And it was a fun project to do, so, you know, good starting points. But let's go to this one here, which was Seared Guy. I have another video I just put up too of a little short demo tune that I used just this preset for a couple rhythm guitars, a couple lead guitars. Turned out really nice. So how did I go about dialing this one in? Well, let's take a sip of coffee, grab a guitar, and take a listen to some of this and see what I did. So as you'll see, I'm using my Yamaha RevStar 620 here. What I started off with was my normal dynamics processor at the end, peak reduction of 5.5, gain of 5, a mix of 75%, slight parallel compression. I did use an EQ block in this just because I had the space for it. Low cuts at 100, high cuts at 11 kilohertz. High frequency at 4.5 kilohertz, Q of 1.2, and I added 2 dB. Mid frequency 445 hertz, mid Q of 1.3, and dropped that down 1.5 dB. And a very subtle 0.5 dB boost at 160 hertz with a Q of 1.4. Okay. Reverb. A little bit of room, decay at 3, pre-delay at 10 milliseconds, mix at 25, and you'll notice it's snapshot enabled, right? I have 2 snapshots here. The second snapshot, I drop the reverb to 20%, okay? And this is more of like a rhythm lead thing, okay? So if you notice also, I have a delay, but on snapshot 1, it's disabled. On snapshot 2, it's enabled, right? And it's a transistor tape, surprise, surprise, with set at a quarter note, feedback of 18%, mix of 22%. I chose the 412 Greenback 25 cab, and in lieu of being able to throw the split crossover technique in there, what I did is I threw a 421 dynamic mic, a little bit of early reflections at 15%, distance of 1 inch back, combined with a 121 ribbon mic, distance of 6 with early reflections at 15. And the amp was set up also for some snapshots to be enabled, right? So on snapshot 1, which was the rhythm, I had drive at 7.1, bass at 5.7, mid at 5.6, treble at 7.4, presence at 7.1, channel volume at 7. Down here, the master was at 5, and that stayed. HBE, fat, C45 saturation, all turned off, okay? That sounded like this, as a bit of a rhythm tone. Okay, now if I switch that over to snapshot 2, what happens? You get a little boost in the drive, goes up to 8, bass is at 6.5, mids at 6.4, treble is at 8, presence at 7.6, channel volume at 7.2, and the delay comes on. That sounded like this. All right, so I was really liking that tone. It worked really well in the mix of that other song. I'll put all the links to the other videos in the description below just so you guys can see them and go check those out and sort of hear how this preset actually sounded in the mix. So that's basically it. This was more of an introduction to the HX Stomp, taking a look at how HX Edit works with it, some of the limitations of this in comparison to those who are used to using Helix, Helix Native, Helix Rack, any of the other versions of Helix, right? But you know, a lot of people might say that, oh, I can't believe we only have 6 blocks, but you know, really and honestly, for a lot of very straight ahead tones where we want a little bit of reverb delay and just a good amp tone, the fact that we still have 3 snapshots, you know, we can get a nice clean, maybe overdrive and a lead tone, and off we go. And you know, some folks who just have simple needs like that, or a wonderful backup system for our Helix, this is just a dream come true. And with the size of it, like literally almost fits in the palm of your hand, takes up so little space on a pedal board, fits in our Helix backpack, top compartment, like just really amazing that Line 6 has put this out, and I think this is going to be a really popular unit. Sounds amazing. It's built like a tank. So I'll do more of these series. I'm going to keep doing with my dialing in series for the Helix, but I'm also going to do one every now and then for the HX Stomp, so we can get some more simplified patches and presets for those who just have those needs. All right. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll really always try my best to answer them. Yeah, like the video, share it if you don't mind, hit the subscribe button if you don't mind, if you haven't already, and I'll be back again soon with some more content. All right, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Take care, and we'll talk soon.